Welcome to Plank of the Week, the one place where you know almost everybody who gets a mention on it is a complete and utter idiot or has done something really stupid. Unfortunately, you might be on it. And if you're watching, to find out if you are, just keep watching, because we have got a delightful panel for you today. Ms. Esther Krakue, thank you very much indeed for being here. Andre Walker returns, hasn't been here for a while. And I think we should actually give Andre the first dibs because, you know, it's always fun to have Andre on the show. And there's been an awful lot of... It's very hot out there, by the way, so people are behaving even more stupidly than they normally do. Andre, what do you got for us?
Well, it is a hot day, and honestly, we could talk about that for ages, but I just generally think what we should do is go for a beer and put some sunscreen on.
Yeah,
anyway,
very good idea.
Anyhow,
not necessarily in that order, of course.
Look, I don't know if it's just this week, but in general, over the past couple of weeks, and this is the first time I've been on in a while, RISHI SUNAK, and I'm just going to say this, first of all, I've defended him plenty of times over his tax arrangements, his wife's tax arrangements, his green card, all that sort of thing. Yeah. But you cannot be... you know, somebody who goes on about the ideological argument against cutting tax at the moment, whilst also having $500 million or whatever it is offshore in your wife's bank account.
And still calling yourself a conservative.
Yeah.
Yeah, well...
He also shouldn't be going to Cleveland in the northeast of this country wearing shoes that cost £500 and are made by Prada, which is what he did when he went and started pointing. No, I do care about it because it shows that he has absolutely no understanding of what people are going through.
Well, yeah, he clearly has no understanding.
I mean, we have a go at Meghan Markle for having a £5,000 handbag, right? So we should also have a go at him for having £500 loafers.
Well, let me just say something about him. He has squandered a huge amount of money. He's a classic socialist, and we've got to turn around and say the problem is with the Conservative Party right now. One day it's going to run out of other people's money. £6,000 for every man, woman, and child in this country. Now, I can't lie to you.
It's our money, by the way.
I quite enjoyed having a half-price pizza at Wetherspoons, much as it may surprise you that I go for pizza and a pint at Wetherspoons.
You don't need half-price pizza at Wetherspoons. It's already half-price.
Yeah, you can pay with 5 magic beans.
It's already half-price.
But of course, then he shut the pubs anyway. And it just showed, you know what? That Eat Out to Help Out money, he might as well have taken a blowtorch to £1 billion.
Yeah, I mean, because what he should have done was not put VAT up. When they came back out of everything and said to the restaurant owners, oh, well, now we're going to put VAT back to 20%. It would have been much better if you hadn't done that.
And because that's assuming you expect them to recover at a rate where they can sort of pay that back. I think Sunak has two main problems. One, he's not a conservative. And two, he's too inexperienced. He's quite a young chancellor. And so a lot of his defence of his tax record has actually fallen by the wayside. I know Philip Hammond wrote that, you know, Margaret Thatcher wouldn't put down taxes right now, and Rishi Sunak is doing that, so he's a real conservative. If Margaret Thatcher was alive and saw what the Conservative government has been doing with fuel duty and this income tax hike, NI, all of that, she would be ripping them in
But also, how can you run for the Conservative leadership when you've been outflanked on the right by Philip Hammond?
I know.
I mean, that is a depressing thought. I mean,
just outflanked anyway. By
Chairman Mao, right, would struggle to be outflanked on the right by Philip Hammond.
I know. He was one of the worst chancellors of all time. And I think Sunak has to be up there as one of the worst chancellors of all time.
Well, he
hasn't done anything good. The only reason people liked him was because he gave them all free money, right?
Yeah.
And that wasn't even his idea. So the idea that he's somehow responsible for saving people's jobs, when he didn't save about 3 million other jobs for people who work for themselves. I speak to people every day who run their own companies, who are practically on the breadline thanks to Sunak. Lots of freelance workers who never got a penny, and he kept steadfastly refusing to help them. And I just don't think he has any right to be in charge of the Conservative Party. In fact, I don't think he's got any right to even be in the government. I think he should take his £500 loafers and get lost and go and live in Santa Monica.
You know he's really in it when the Labour government has a point saying this chancellor has overseen the largest tax hike. I'm like, what? What? On what planet does Labour have a point about taxes? Right? But that is a very valid point. How can you possibly expect the public to trust you when you've given them the largest tax burden in what, almost a century? That is just not.
Aren't him and his wife really interesting green cards and non-dom status because they see this as a stepping stone to the big job in Silicon Valley? Because the reality is, Prime Ministers in the past used to take peerages. There is one reason why they don't take peerages now, because you have to declare your earnings on the House of Lords register. That's the reason. They are all raking it in.
There's no money
raking it in.
Absolutely right. Esther, who's your first one?
So my first one is Prince Harry. Now, I need to read this for you because Meghan McCain actually wrote a piece for the Daily Mail today, and I think she summed it up. Obviously, we should leave it to an American to sum up why Prince Harry should shut up about America and the Constitution. Yeah. But I thought what she wrote was fantastic. So he said in his speech, because he was at the UN sort of... a speech
he made to practically no one, by the way. Did you see the size of the audience?
Honestly, it was like a kindergarten.
No, I said I've seen more of an audience at children's play.
He said a room is more than an empty space.
Yeah.
I want you to just think about that as a concept.
I think the empty space is quite upstairs, but I'm not going to say that. But
no, it's not. A room is an empty space with walls on the floor. Yeah. That's what it is.
Literally. But this is what he said. So, from the horrific war in Ukraine to the rolling back of a constitutional right in the US, we are witnessing a global assault on democracy and freedom, which he's referring to the US. The cause of Mandela's life, he droned in his nearly 30-minute remark. So he's trying to make climate change, the American Constitution, and to an extent Ukraine, like something linked to Mandela's legacy. And I just think this just shows what a joke it is to even have him over there talking about all these things, especially climate change, when he rolled up in a fucking private jet. And I just think, so you're going to the UN to whinge about climate change when you literally got there in a private jet.
Yeah. And also, whoever thought that he would be a good guy to talk to about Nelson Mandela?
Exactly.
You know, why?
No, I strongly disagree with this. This man has got an A-level in geography, grade D. Yeah. Right? He is somebody who knows about geopolitics.
Yeah, does he?
I'll tell you something. The rule apparently at Plank of the Week is you can't have somebody who's dead. But I was thinking of having Nelson Mandela for failure to rise from the dead and go to the UN to put Prince Harry right. Because, you know, I once had an argument with somebody about Nelson Mandela, who was an incredibly practical guy. That's what people forget. He wasn't one of these ideological loonies. Yeah. He supported trophy hunting as a way of supporting the economy of South African conservation. Yep. Now, let's be clear. How many pro-climate change, you know, anti-economy Greta Thunbergs would have agreed with him on that? The man was not a green loony by any stretch of
like all these things, people think of Nelson Mandela and they think they should support him and have part of his legacy as their thing. But they don't actually know what he did. No. They have no clue.
Absolutely not.
You know, he was once regarded as a terrorist by Margaret Thatcher, and that wasn't wrong either. No. You know, because he was a terrorist. He would have been quite happy. He would have been quite happy to have admitted it.
But the reality is about Nelson Mandela. Look, I mean, he came out of prison as a saint because that was the PR campaign. What the guy did was whatever was practical at the time to ensure that South Africa ceased to be an apartheid country.
But doesn't it sum up the change in the world that we now live in? That, you know, somebody like Nelson Mandela, who genuinely did do something extraordinary in his own country, is now represented by Prince Harry, who literally hasn't done anything in his life for anyone, apart from himself. Is the point.
But I think it's even more insulting because these are people that have no understanding of the real world. I mean, I don't understand how people are not absolutely offended that someone like Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, who couldn't hack it in the royal family and moved to their 9-bedroom, sort of 13-bathroom mansion in the US, that don't understand the struggles people are going through, is flying in on a private jet to lecture us about how climate change is keeping us him up at night and how we should fundamentally change how we live so we can accommodate his nightmares of climate change.
Climate change is keeping him up at night. Have you seen the private jet landing fees during the day? You know, it's a nightmare.
It's very noisy out in Montecito, all those private jets landing.
By the way, the other thing, you've got to be fair to the man. When he flies on Elton John's private jet, Elton John pays for trees to be planted to offset the carbon.
But as I often point out, it doesn't go well that because Chris Martin, famously the Coldplay singer, planted 40,000 trees in Sri Lanka after he took a flight somewhere. And unfortunately for him, they were planted in the wrong place and they burst into flames and will burn to the ground. Which wasn't a great idea for the carbon output of Sri Lanka. But anyway, that's another story. I'm going to go. You talk about people not being able to deal with practical problems. I don't know if you've ever come across Rachel CUNLIFFE, who is the senior associate editor of the New Statesman. Calls herself devout classicist, indulgent editrix, at one point the only ancient Greek teacher in South Korea. So you know that she's not at all pretentious, right?
At all.
This woman, right, actually put onto Twitter an incredible tweet. She said this: "We have a power cut. Our main lights are still working, and weirdly so is the fridge, thank goodness, but everything else is out. Fuse box looks fine. Turning it off and then on again hasn't worked. Seems to just be our flat, not the block. Any tips?" Now, anyone with half a brain knows that when all the lights go out, or some of the lights go out, it usually means that there's an appliance in the house that has somehow tripped it, right?
Yes, of course.
And that's what you then do. She apparently didn't know this. She went to Cambridge. I actually tweeted out Obviously, they don't teach common sense at Cambridge. She didn't answer. But all of her friends were going backwards and forwards, and it was like the most ridiculous middle-class kind of conversation you've ever seen
extremely sexist
in your life. Yes.
And I stand by this because I am the anti-feminist. In her defense, she's a woman. And we don't tend to know about these things. I often, every time I'm in traffic...
Yeah, but she's not alone. She is married to a man, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, she must be married to a feminist or a
well, she must be. But it turns out after about an hour of her friends going backwards and forwards, it turns out that she discovered that it was her elderly student kettle that had apparently tripped the whole system.
Mike, I think you're the plank. And I'll tell you why. Because you should have tweeted back advice that was wholly false.
Yes.
What you needed to do, say to it,
call the police.
What you need to do is find a 24-hour hardware shop, which is going to be rather difficult, and you've got to buy an electric spinal column, plug it in, let it warm up for 10 minutes, and just make up some absolute bunkum.
And you know the weird thing? I would have believed it. If you tweeted that at me, I would have believed. I'm not joking.
Success. It turns out my elderly student kettle was tripping the switch. It cost £20, lasted 13 years, so it had a good run, and my husband always hated it anyway. The plugs are back on, and we'll just be making tea in a saucepan for a while. Oh. I mean,
you know,
what is wrong with these people?
This is a good case for the perfect balance between the masculine and the feminine. I don't do anything DIY in my life. If I have something was flashing on my car and it said, add oil or change oil, I don't know. And so I literally walked straight to the nearest man I said and be like, can you help me fix this? And then he started asking me questions about the car. And I'm like, look, I just found out what model this was last year and I've had it for 3 years. I don't know anything about the car.
I don't think you should be boasting about that.
Well, you know what I mean? I pride myself.
Know what you mean.
No, I'm just saying I don't really want to know about those things. I feel like that's not my job.
Yes. Well, here's what you wouldn't do, though. You wouldn't go on Twitter and go, I've just had this flash up on my car. What should I do?
I did, actually.
Did you? Well, maybe you should go and live with
I had really nice gentlemen help me, and they said, take it to Quick Fit.
It reminds me of a Frankie Boyle story.
I mean, you have to be told to take a car to Quick Fit.
Pretty much.
Really?
It reminds me of a Frankie Boyle story, don't worry, it's not a bad one, where he said that he was reading an article where, you know, women understand what your man was thinking when you brought a present for you. And he said what it was almost certainly was, that'll do.
Yeah.
Right? Because men are not particularly interested.
No.
Exactly.
Well, I don't want to turn this into a male versus female thing. I just think anyone who claims to be an intellectual and who can't work out that their kettle has just blown a fuse, I'm afraid should be immediately stripped of any writing title of any kind.
But, Mike, anybody who thinks that the good people of South Korea have only got one ancient Greek teacher for no reason whatsoever, because they didn't have the money to get more, they didn't have the wherewithal. They basically just thought, this is boring, we're not, this is no interest
absolutely
whatsoever.
Hopeless. Absolutely hopeless. Right, so what's your next one?
NICOLA Sturgeon.
Excellent. She hasn't been on for a while.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I don't know whether she has scored a success. I think she really has this week with the fact that the Supreme Court has not thrown out her second Indie referendum, which is, of course, utterly... Yes, I accept not yet. So there was a petition, I think, on Monday to get rid of it just without really having a hearing at all, which, of course, is an obvious thing to do because the indicative referendum, it's very specific that reserved powers are not sort of a list of things at the government level. It's a list of things that she can do, and she can only do things on that list. Right. And so I think
even she's not expected to win. I mean, she didn't make the application in order to win it. She made the application in order to lose it.
But I want to ask you this question because I think you are of Scottish descent, aren't you? You had Scottish.
Well, my parents are both Scottish, so technically
Graham's an incredibly Scottish name.
Well, it's a very Scottish name. We have our own tartan.
Well, you'd be related to the Duke of Montrose?
No, actually, we were the Menteith Grahams.
Oh, really? Okay.
There were two sets of them.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what, this is fascinating television for anyone. But there is a point that people who are of Scottish heritage make, which is the fundamental unfairness of saying that if you move from Germany and before Britain left the European Union, which was only a couple of years ago, you would be able to vote in the Scottish referendum, but a Scottish person living in Newcastle, working for a Scottish company, can't.
No, it's absolute madness. Ridiculous.
But you know the crazy thing about that Supreme Court case she filed? What really irritated me was she said, I want to dot my I's and cross my T's to make sure all the legal sort of hurdles are in place for this referendum I've set for October the 13th, 2023. And I'm like, who do you think you are? Literally, do you think the Supreme Court is at your beck and call for you to say, this is the date I have, This is what I want to do. Just make sure it's all right, and then we can go.
Oh, she should have done.
And also, she doesn't think she'll ever be out of office. She thinks she'll be like president of Scotland for the rest of time.
If she's Idi Amin, the last president of Scotland, Edinburgh. You know, if she was a real patriot, she'd take it to the Court of Sessions in Edinburgh and say the Supreme Court has no right to rule.
Well,
but anyway.
she might do that, but we'll see. Who's your second one?
So my second one is the NCAA.
Yes.
Right. So
you better explain who they are for people who don't know.
So they're like basically the organisation that regulates swimming competitions in the US.
Well, they're sort of the athletic body, aren't they?
Yeah.
They cover everything, I think, not just
Is it
swimming.
just the athletics?
No, I think they cover everything.
Okay, yeah. Does anyone remember Leah Thomas?
I call her Leah Thomas. Pronounced Leah.
Oh yeah, true, Leah Thomas. Quite a burly man, tall.
Good swimmer.
Nice
though.
set of.
Great swimmer.
No, not as a man.
Well, definitely not as a man. Actually, a few months
better swimmer than us.
He was a terrible man. Anyway,
you've got buoyancy.
Oh God. That's just. Why?
Have you not seen me and Mike in our speedos? We look absolutely fantastic.
I do not want
to think
of anything, we're like anything buoyant downstairs.
We're like Wright said, Fred's been to the pub for 6 years.
Oh God. Anyway, Leah Thomas just won Women of the Year.
Yeah.
And I cannot, where to begin? How can a grown man who hasn't even technically been, I mean, even the argument with Caitlyn Jenner winning Women of the Year, whatever. Caitlyn hadn't even been a woman for a year.
Yeah.
So this is clearly you just poking the bear, right? You're just really trying to piss everyone off because
Yeah.
we all know that Leah Thomas is a guy and he was a terrible swimmer as a guy and then he's entered these competitions and creamed these women because he's still a guy. And that is, I think, the cynical thing here. They know that it's going to rile people up, but they're still doing it.
And that's why they do it.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I
you've
think,
fallen for it.
well, that's true, but I do think that something should happen. These organizations need to have consequences because I think when you disrespect women in these ways, there are actually real social consequences that come from that, and you polarize people a lot more because now we're just thinking, oh, these transgenders here, these transgenders there, and I don't really. That doesn't keep me up at night. But this is where you cross the line that's really getting people pissed off because women have fought for years, for decades, to actually be respected in our sports. And to have this man, which is quite clearly a man, being given the title of Women of the Year by this athletic...
What does it mean as well for the other women who might have been in line to be Woman of the Year?
There's only one. Well, actually, there's loads of places in America now where really the competition is for third, fourth and fifth place because they know who's going to come first and second. But look, my view now is there is an obvious solution. We should all be women, and there should be two categories of women. There's the fragrant, attractive ones, and the hairy, smelly ones. Yeah. Right, and just separate it out.
I think you will find a lot of feminists fall into the latter category.
Yeah, I don't think that's subtle enough, to be honest. But, I take your point.
No, but it's just so insulting, and it's so upset, and I think, you people really have a cynical agenda here because I don't think it stops there. Did you see that picture of Biden's, is it health secretary or something like that? The man. Did you see that?
No.
Oh my gosh. And some assist, I don't know, these people in the kind of Biden's high office, which basically kind of shows what a joke Biden's administration is. And one is a guy, bald head, dress and heels, and the other is a transgender, well, was in the army as a man. So you know what we're talking about here for decades, and that has now become this sort of health secretary or whatever. And I just thought, this is a clown show. This is ridiculous. Yeah. Your administration has become a joke. You're telling me in 330 million people, you couldn't find anyone better.
There was that lady in the weightlifting who looked like Meatloaf.
Yeah.
And I thought, look, I'm not being funny. She did look like Meatloaf.
Yeah.
I mean...
No, I know. I mean, it's just gone completely
I'd do anything for love, but definitely not that.
Not. Well, I mean, she might force you.
Since we're in the midst of a heat wave, I feel like we should have a heat wave nominee, and it's going to be Sadiq Khan, because Sadiq Khan at the weekend put out some hot tips for staying cool. And this is what he tweeted, right? Stay out of the heat. So these are some of his suggestions. Keep out of the sun between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m., right? Avoid extreme physical exertion. I don't know what he means by that.
No sense.
If you have to go out in the heat, walk in the shade, apply sunscreen, and wear a hat and loose-fitting, light-coloured cotton clothes. What if you haven't got any loose-fitting cotton clothes?
Is he our mother?
Right? Have plenty of cold drinks and avoid excess alcohol. Take a cool shower, bath or body wash. This is my favourite one. Sprinkle water over your skin or clothing, or keep a damp cloth on the back of your neck.
What is it?
So you're going to walk around with a damp cloth on the back of your neck.
It's like you're a beached whale being dehydrated.
I mean, it's only a couple of degrees higher than it normally is. I mean, it really is ridiculous. Consider visiting a cool public building, i.e. a place of worship, a library or a supermarket. So imagine just walking into a supermarket.
But actually, not being funny, and I don't mean this as a religious insult or anything like that, but he's so woke. Note, not a pub, right? So everybody knows that most people are going to be going to air-conditioned pubs and beer gardens.
Well, actually, I've been very pleased to see that most people have not taken any advantage or any notice of the government advice about what to do in a heat wave. They've all gone to the pub. Everywhere.
Well, we've lived through 2 years of COVID. We know how the government stuff things up.
Everywhere you walk around here, it looks like Barcelona. You know, there's people out on the street drinking, eating, having a good time, snogging each other, as indeed they should.
Don't want to see that.
In the middle of the summer.
But last time we were in the pub, I licked Mike's face. He was absolutely delighted.
What?
And then he told me he had COVID.
Which was a lie, to be fair.
Yeah.
But I will tell you something. I genuinely went for a bit of food after the breakfast show this morning with Julia Hartley-Brewer because we were filming this and I was going to hang around for the day.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, walking around Borough Market, which people who don't know the area is a food market just a couple of metres from here, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm wearing a three-piece suit. Everyone thought I was a nutter, and I admit that. But to be honest with you, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, but people in hot countries walk around in three-piece suits all the time. Guess what? You know, in Atlanta, Georgia, people go to work every day. It's hotter than this.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely. What happens in Dubai?
The idea they can't run any trains. Well, people take all sorts of measures to go to Dubai to lie in temperatures of 45 degrees.
Heat,
and they don't die. No. And I haven't seen people, I mean, I keep saying to people every time I meet them the last couple of days, I still haven't managed to see anybody dropping dead from heat stroke. It hasn't happened.
I mean, the hysteria around it is incredible. They're like, the NHS is going to be overwhelmed. People are going to drop like flies. And I'm like, honestly, survival of the fittest. This is Darwin in action. If you are not intelligent enough to take the safety precautions that you need to take to not die from this heat,
but also, isn't this partly about trying to persuade us that climate change is going to kill us?
Oh, sure it is.
Because, look, you're talking about taking precautions. What if you didn't, right?
Yeah,
you know what I did today? I came out, didn't think about it, put a three-piece suit on. I've been wandering around. I haven't got a bottle of water. I haven't got sunscreen. I haven't got, I don't know, a mask or whatever it is, you know, shield of destiny or whatever it is you're supposed to take. And you know what?
Portable canopy, umbrella.
Yeah, that's right. The reality is, I will be fine.
But
well,
you know the thing is,
so I mean, it doesn't really matter.
The climate change hysteria around this has actually gripped people that I thought were intelligent. I am seeing people that are very highly educated saying, "Oh, this is why we can't push back net zero. This is why," and I'm like, because of one heat wave.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
I know.
Do you people know anything about anything?
No.
So you expect us to fundamentally change our lives and be taxed to the hilt because of one heat wave? Why don't you stay in your house?
Because, of course, up until now, all the things that we've done have done nothing except put the temperature up. Anyway, give us your third.
So my third one is the lovely, the beautiful Sir Keir Starmer.
Of course.
Now, there was an argument before the show because you were thinking of doing Keir Starmer, but you were interested in Holocaust videos, which I will allow you to talk about. I'm going to say that I really think that he's wasted our time with all these motions to no confidence in government and whatever. I think, look, there is an element of navel-gazing in Parliament. We all accept that. I'm not sure that people really care about this leadership contest as much as they care about getting rid of the cost of living crisis, net zero and COVID.
Some affordable fuel.
Basically, the self-inflicted wounds of the political class. But once again, you know, Keir Starmer is absolutely on the wrong end of all of this. I think he's wasting our time. I think he's an insult. I think that him and his chums destroyed the Labour Party, a great institution, with their obsession with the EU, and I think that they've not learnt anything.
No, they haven't. I mean, I'm going to give an honourable mention to Tobias Ellwood while we're talking about votes of confidence, who decided it was a great idea not to have confidence in his own government, by which he has now been kicked out, had the whip removed, now won't be able to vote for Penny Mordaunt. So she's not very happy either. So well done, Tobias. No, but my problem with Sir Keir Starmer this week is that he filmed yet another one of these new sort of political videos, and he thought it'd be a great idea if he and David Lammy were walking, not just outside it, walking through this rather solemn Holocaust memorial in Berlin, which has got really a series of stones. And he looks like he's making a music video, you know, and it shows you that and he doesn't mention really that it's there. He just has it in the background. So you're supposed to, sort of, you know, unconsciously take in the fact that, oh, they can't be anti-Semites because they're at the
I was just about to say, how did that go with
But the trouble is, it actually
Jewish
makes it seem more likely that they're anti-Semites because he's got such a bad kind of aerial and antennae for these things, and he thinks that just by walking through the Holocaust Museum that it's all right for half the people in his party to continue to be anti-Semitic.
I've not seen this video, but it just reminds me of father and son with Yusuf Islam. And what's that bloke from Boyzone?
No, it is. It's ridiculous. I mean, when you see it, you'll know exactly what I mean. And it just is quite shameful. But anyway,
I was just about to say, did that go down well with the sort of Jewish base? But I don't reckon they have any.
Well, I mean, as I say, what it says is that they still don't really get it.
They don't get it. Well, yeah, I mean, just up until like a couple of weeks ago, his party was literally trying to murder him for saying Brexit is going to happen. I just thought, what?
Yeah.
It took you, what, 6 years to finally get with the programme?
And as Boris frequently reminds us, he voted against it 48 times.
Exactly.
And that was remarkably dishonest because he refused to have anybody film that speech. And then he turned around and he said, we're not going back into the customs union, we're not going back into the single market. And you think, OK, well, you finally accepted it. And then you just read a bit further on, it goes, what we will do is have side deals, which means, so basically
unilateral side deals. And I just like, oh, yeah, that's what we really want to do. Put Labour in charge of that.
He still cannot be trusted on Brexit.
No, well, I mean, his party can't. I mean, he's a useless leader, really, but you cannot lead people that don't get it. You cannot lead a pack of children. And this is the point I've been making. You know, the Labour Party needs a complete sort of makeover.
It does. They can't beat a party that currently doesn't have a leader. Anyway,
exactly.
Who's the third one?
So the third one is MARINA PURKISS.
Yes.
Now, I need to give a caveat.
She's a sort of little-known left-wing commentator.
I don't think she's little, no. I think
she's known on social media.
Yeah, but she's definitely more in the left-wing circles. And I've done, you know, a show with her before, and she's lovely in person, but she needs to be roasted. So she tweeted, if one more time for the morons at the back, morons. It's not diversity if, when you reach positions of power, you use that power to pull the ladder and disadvantage those from the same backgrounds as you. It's not diversity if. I don't think she understands what the word diversity means. Now, she's referring to people like Priti Patel over, you know, she's been very vocal about...
She is white, I presume, MARINA PURKISS, is she?
Well, yes, she's Italian. But I'm not even going to go... You know what? Unlike these people, I'm not going to make it about race in that way. I'm not going to go after her for a race. But she is referring to Priti Patel because she's been quite vocal about the fact that she doesn't agree with the Rwanda policy, blah, 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 blah. And she said that, you know, Priti Patel, your parents, you know, came to this country like these migrants, you have no compassion. And it makes me want to rip my hair out because for people that claim to be so compassionate and want to understand the African migrants, it might be helpful to understand something about Africa. Just a little bit. Just, you know, not that much.
Just a small thing.
And I was like, you know, Priti Patel's parents were part of the generation who lived in Uganda that were kicked out by Idi Amin. Yeah. Did you know that? No, obviously they didn't. And I've often made the point that as someone who's lived in West Africa, who understands the system and how these people come to the... Well, before they used to stow away on boats and ships. I used to tell people that, and now they found an easier route through the Mediterranean. You need to understand the system and the psychology behind it. Genuine asylum seekers, one, don't have excess of thousands of pounds to pay people smugglers. And genuine asylum seekers don't tend to be young, able-bodied men.
No.
They tend to be older women. And exactly.
These guys are being recruited.
It's a whole people smuggling network. And I think what I really take personally is the fact that for all these people that you see come off the boats, there are thousands of people that have died horrible, inhumane deaths, somewhere in the Mediterranean or even in the Channel, that don't make it across, that don't either have the money to pay them or end up being enslaved in North Africa or just die, right? And we don't hear about them. And that is what this people smuggling industry is doing. And we don't talk about that. But you want to feign and be really compassionate and say, oh, just let them in.
But these are the same people.
You should let them in because you're brown.
Yeah, and they must be good people.
Yeah, and I mean, that's bigoted.
They might be good people, but we'd rather know who they are.
Exactly.
And where they're coming from and what they're doing, if you don't mind. We haven't got a lot of time here, so I'm going to do my final one, and then we're going to have to pick the winner. Tom Tugendhat, for me, is the third man, because this is a guy who, until the leadership race for the Tory party, people thought quite highly of him. Now they just think he's a plank, because unfortunately for him, when you rise a bit too high above the level that you should have stayed at, you end up looking like an idiot. You should have stayed down there. He was quite good as a critical backbencher. He was quite good on military matters.
You're not going to believe this, but he was in the army. Did you know that?
Did you know that?
No,
yeah,
I know.
I can't believe it.
This is a bloke on the first debate with Channel 4. He wore an SAS tie, just in case you didn't know he was in the army. And he kept saying that he'd been on the front line, just in case you didn't know he was in the army. And he also said that he knew a lot about serving his country, just in case you didn't know he was in the army. And he went on and on and on. He didn't really have much to say, didn't have much to offer. And I think he's done himself a massive disservice. He's a bit like the Gary Neville of the Tory party. Gary Neville was a great footballer.
Zero sense of
great footballer,
self-awareness.
went off to become a really good commentator and a really good pundit. Then took a job in management and made a complete hash of it. And now nobody takes him seriously. exactly.
Yeah.
You know, so
and I think
will
he's black
return
now,
to the backbenches, I think, severely damaged, which makes him a plank, in my view.
But the thing is, the problem with people like Tom is when you put your head above the parapet, people analyse you more. They look at your track record. They look at the things
you have to.
Exactly. And that is the problem. If you're not ready, if you're not at a point where you've almost cleaned up your image a bit, you really do yourself more harm than good. Yeah.
But because of the curtailed nature of this show, unfortunately, we now have to go very quickly. So you tell us, Esther, your favourite one of the three.
Yeah.
And we will pick
who's three?
The final. Your three.
Oh, my favourite one.
Because that's how we make it simpler now.
Yeah. I thought you were supposed to choose mine.
We used to do that, but now we haven't got time, you see.
Okay, the favourite one of my three. Prince Harry.
Prince Harry has to be. So, and Andre, you pick your favourite one of your three?
I'm going to go for Starmer because we both like Starmer.
I like Starmer, yeah, I do. And I think I'm going to go, because it represents to me all of the madness around the heat waves, I'm going to go with SADIQ Khan.
Yes.
Because he's going to carry the counter for everybody.
Yeah.
So it's SADIQ Khan, it's KEIR Starmer.
Stiff competition.
And it's Prince Harry. These are some old favourites.
Yeah,
I've got to say to you, I know it's short of time, I'm just going to say, we just cannot let Prince Harry away without winning it this week.
I think that's
and I know he's not one of my nominees.
He went on a private jet.
Yeah.
That is, I feel like that is complete, true planker.
Yeah, and he also spoke to nobody. There was literally three people in the room. You know, what's he doing?
Let's be clear, delegates from Tuvalu have not got much to do with you.
I'm happy to give you KEIR Starmer for number 2 and SADIQ Khan for number 3. So, not for the first time, Prince Harry, plank of the week. Thanks to Esther. Thanks to Andre. We'll see you next time.